Hello, my name is Jan Maples. I'm with the Connecting Point, and what I will be doing today is demonstrating a model that has to do with team building for project leaders and managers. So with that, we'll begin. So welcome back, day 2 of the training. You had an opportunity yesterday to look at the stages of team development that we walked through, and we talked about the characteristics of high-performing teams. Sounds simple in theory, but what we really find out is that in practice, it's a much more difficult thing to do. So what we'll be exploring today is something that I call the power of dysfunction. In other words, why aren't we all rowing in the same direction? Oftentimes we've got our oars in the water, but are we really rowing in the same direction? So what we'll be looking at in this power of dysfunction is actually based on a model that Patrick Lencioni, who wrote the book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. How many of you have read that? Okay, good. A few of you are familiar with it. Well, what he presents in the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a model that's very simple, it's clear, it's straightforward, it makes a lot of sense. And so whether you're talking about your own project team, or you're talking about your department team, or even some nonprofit or community organization that you might be a part of a team, you will see all of these dynamics that take place within the team building context. What I like to do in this first part is to give you first an overview of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. What we'll do next then is we'll take each of the dysfunctions and we'll look at what are some of the characteristic behaviors that you see demonstrated in each of the dysfunctions. And then later today, we'll get to the good stuff where we talk about strategies to overcome each of these dysfunctions. So that's where we're heading today, tagging on to what we did yesterday in the session. So as I go through these 5 dysfunctions, what I invite you to do is to be thinking about projects, teams that you've been a part of, perhaps even the one that you're responsible for leading right now, and look to see where can you relate to where your team is in regard to the 5 dysfunctions. So let's start with what I call the foundation or the base of the pyramid here, which is absence of trust. And as we'll see, each of these will build. So we'll go from absence of trust to fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and then inattention to results. So to kind of give you the Reader's Digest version of this, the framework really is on absence of trust. And what Lencioni talks about here is that people tend to have an unwillingness to be vulnerable. That's counter-survival in our kind of civilization and culture. And so if you're not able to be vulnerable and to admit mistakes with each other, you can see where an absence of trust can come from. For me, trust is a very sort of volatile word. So when you think of, I don't trust you, what kinds of things, what does that mean to you when somebody says, I don't trust so-and-so? Yes, okay? So I don't trust your character, it could be. I don't trust, yes, your communication, good, yes. I don't trust your competence, right? Do you even have the skills to do the job? I don't trust your commitment to the project, or I don't trust your caring for the team. So, trust is really a core foundation upon which everything else builds. Well, you can only spend a certain amount of time flip-flopping and floundering around in absence of trust before you naturally as a team can get drawn into the next dysfunction, which is fear of conflict. And what we mean by fear of conflict here is, is the team willing to engage in rigorous debate about the approaches to the project, about the specifics of the technology, about the interpersonal dynamics of the team? So fear of conflict is something that we often see happening in organizations. Can you really debate what's going on? Or are you engaging in sort of veiled and guarded kinds of activities? So after a certain amount of time in trust and fear of conflict, you can see how that could naturally impact the ability to have a commitment to what the project happens to be. And so if you haven't rigorously engaged in debate and exchange of ideas about the project, the direction, the goal, what the milestones and the resources are along the way, where is your commitment, right? I mean, are you committed at that point to the project if you haven't gotten out of these 2 particular dysfunctions, right? So what does it take to actually get commitment? And we'll explore that more in detail, but yes, exactly. People want to be heard. I have a saying that says you have to weigh in order to buy in. And so that's important. Instead of just feigning agreement in the project meeting, and then at the water cooler is when you have the real discussion about what's going on. So you can see how these build on each other. Then if there's a lack of commitment, what's the impact going to be on accountability, avoidance of accountability? Now, this word, unfortunately, has gotten a bad rap these days, and that's a whole different conversation that we could have about accountability. But in the context of 5 dysfunctions of a team, accountability has to do with the team members' willingness to call each other out on the project, to call each other out on have you delivered what you were supposed to deliver to me when you were supposed to deliver it. And so if you don't trust each other, you're not willing to rigorously engage in debate, you're not committed on a clear project plan, are you likely to call each other out? Exactly, not. And so this accountability could be around certain behaviors in the team, certain actions relative to the project, and so forth. Well, as these cascade upward, you can see what do you expect is going to be the results of that particular project or that particular activity. Probably not going to lead to the most optimum results. You might produce results, but is it the best that the team could produce? And so what we notice in the inattention to results dysfunction is that people tend to be more interested in their own individual agendas and goals than what the team's goals might be. So this is a quick overview of what the 5 dysfunctions of a team are. Where we'll take that next then is to really look at what are some of the characteristics and behaviors that are demonstrated in each of these so that you can kind of hold the mirror up to your own teams to see where are we at in relationship to each.